We're on to item 6, public comments on items that are not on the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council and other residents on items that are not on tonight's agenda. This meeting, well, for this item and for each of the items on public comment, if you'd like to make a public comment and you're here, please fill out a speaker slip. This meeting is also available virtually, so if you're watching from home and would like to speak, please use the raise hand function on your computer and the city clerk will call on you to speak. So are there any public comments, any speaker slips?
Mayor, I have no speaker slips and there are no hands raised in our virtual audience.
Okay, we will then move on to the first of our presentations this evening. And we're back to Mr. Blodgett with the Lafayette Historical Society. Floor is yours.
Good evening. Well, let's see if my computer will decide to work. It's always been rather finicky. It is, well, I'm getting it in that spot right now. Slideshow from beginning. There we go. All right. Thank you for your patience. Good evening. I've never presented before you folks in this capacity. I've met you all. So I'm again serving as representative for the Lafayette Historical Society. They wrangled me in not because of my love of history or my time in Lafayette, but because I was one of the youngest people that agreed to become one of their members. So I actually, my position is the official caretaker of Old Betsy, Lafayette's first fire engine or first mechanized fire engine. And just to give you kind of a little brief overview of some of her history. In the early years, or let me back up here. The truck is a 1919 Ford Model TT. Some say it could be a 1921. There's arguments that the body is 19 and the engine is 21, but for all intents and purposes, she's over 100 years old. The way Ford built them is you would basically order your truck. You got the chassis, you got the engine, you got the steering wheel, and then you would send it out to a coach or carriage builder who would build it to your specifications. She was outfitted originally with a 50-gallon soda acid tank that she still has, a manifold that could be hooked up to a hydrant if they existed back then. And that was to fight local fires, mostly in the downtown is my understanding. The fire district from documents state that from 1919 that the fire district was put in place for Lafayette. Our first fire chief was L.I. Starks and the assistant was Ed J. Allen. I'm not sure if they were paid or not. We believe that the fire truck was acquired sometime around 1920 by the citizens of Lafayette for a sum around $980, which was a lot of money if you think about back then. They used it between 1920 and about 1933, although it kind of hung around until the early 40s because I found some photographs where she was in some of those. The chief during those times was Ed Morrison, and he was the only paid employee for the new fire department, and the rest of the folks were volunteers made up of local residents. He parked the truck in his own personal garage because there was no facility at that time. A lot of people ask us, how did Old Betsy get her name? Well, legend has it, from what I've read, is that it came from the fire chief at the time, Chief Shirley Peaks, and sometime around 1951, and the name has stuck. I've seen it spelled the way I've got it in my presentation. I've also seen it spelled i.e., nobody that really knows is around anymore. At some point, they upgraded their fire equipment and sold it off. Before they sold it off, the Lafayette Junior Chamber of Commerce, JC's, used it for parades and special occasions. Lafayette School had their Westival that was really popular back in the day. The photo you see at the top right, that is a Westival celebration, and then that is Chief Peaks in the lower right-hand corner. After several years, it went up for sale. It went through several hands at that point. It was picked up by Earl and John Sanko, and they put it in their ranch in a barn for about 15 years. So the imposing figure on the top photo is Earl Sanko holding the axe, with the condition that old Betsy was in when the city decided to gather up and buy her for the city. John Callier, who was a local resident here, grew up here. He got quite involved when he discovered that it was in this barn, and convinced a lot of folks that it would be cool to have it back with the city. The Historical Society spearheaded the fundraising. They said, give some Betsy bucks and we'll buy her back. Names such as Merchant, Berzoni, Bill Ames, and many, many others were big contributors towards that. She was purchased, originally they were going to be, they would sell it to the city for $3,500, but a collector in Montana said, I really want it for my collection. And so they upped the ante by $50 and they got her. The work begins. As you can see from the photograph, she was in pretty sad repair. George Wasson, who was the vice mayor at the time on the council, had convinced the council they weren't keen on putting money towards it, but they agreed that they would register it and they would house it. However, it sat in George's garage for many, many years, as Joanne will tell you, being his neighbor. She was in pretty bad repair. She had a hole in the radiator. The box was, all the wood was rotten. The wheels were rotten. So a group of dedicated volunteers that either had some skill or no skill at all got together, and they patiently went through it over the auspices of George Wasson. Again, you can see some of the old dry rot and the condition it was in. There is the progress of it. The fenders have been powder coated and painted. The rims had been sandblasted and painted. Brand new wires or wood spokes, hickory, and new tires. Then this is how she appeared when she was completed sometime prior to 2009. She was given a new coat of fire engine red with the black accents, solid oak running boards and rear step. Her original soda acid tank was repainted. The toolbox, the fire axe, and the rails were all original to her, as is the wire cage up top. The radiator was repaired, brakes were rebuilt and adjusted. The coils, that is the electrical system, were replaced or repaired. And then she was finished up with some gold leaf lettering to finish off that beautiful look that she has. Here's George Wasson, very proud to get it out of his garage for a moment. It was completed under basically his direction. He served also on our board for the Lafayette Historical Society many years. He is, I believe, turning 98 this year in September. He's still with us, had some health issues, but we're hoping to get her over to see him soon because he was the caretaker for about 40 years of old Betsy. Fortunately, the city did make good on their promise of housing her when they built this beautiful library. And as you all were aware, she has her own special spot in the garage in her cage with the lighting, and there's space for storage, and it's a little cramped to work on it. We're just hoping we can get her out more. So we need to figure out how that garage door to the garage cannot be damaged. So a little bit of history on what an old Model T is. Again, the Model T, as we all know, is the old cars. The Model TT is basically the truck version of it, just a bigger frame, but same basic engine. As I said, they sold it basically with the driver's seat only. It's a 4-cylinder engine, internal combustion, of course. It develops about 20 horsepower from a 133 cubic engine. The top speed is approximately 40 to 50 miles an hour, but Mike, no, I don't think so. I think we've had it close to 25. It ain't fun. It's got a 10-gallon gas tank under the driver's seat. And it is reported that it gets mileage of somewhere between 13 and 20. But again, I dispute that. It drives like no conventional vehicle that all of us are familiar with. It looks familiar as a regular car, but it's not. Your steering wheel, of course, is the steering wheel. You have 3 pedals on the floor. Your left pedal is your clutch that works pretty much like a clutch, but there's some nuances. The right pedal is the brake, but the brake is an engine brake. So if you're not in gear, that truck's not stopping. And the middle pedal is your reverse. Okay. Then you have on the side, you have in back is going to be your brake. Middle position is your neutral, and your forward is your low first gear. She also has a Wolford transmission, and I probably should ask Mike to answer to that. We don't use it that often. Yeah, direct drive. She doesn't, it will get her up to those speeds I talked about earlier, but I don't think we're interested in doing that in this vehicle. The transmission is back on the steering column. It doesn't have a floor throttle. The throttle is up on the steering column. And the other lever is not your blinkers or your windshield wipers. It's a spark advance. And so you're basically tuning the engine as you drive. So there's a lot of moving parts, and that's why you'll typically see 2 people in the truck at any given time. You've got the driver who is paying attention to what he needs to pay attention. And the co-pilot is basically making sure that everything is staying where it should and people aren't making evasive moves in front of you. The tires are 30-inch by 3.5 on the front and bigger in the back, 33 by 5s. The tires are mounted to a steel rim, and then that is in turn mounted to another rim with the wooden spokes. So it's kind of convenient to be able to just pull off the tire on the one rim and leave the one part of the wheel on there, but it has its challenges. So Ford built probably that reportedly somewhere around 15 million Model Ts up until they changed the Model A in 1928. They did continue to make the Model T engines up until the early 40s. And it was said at one point that up to 10% of all the world's vehicles were Model Ts. Old Betsy through the years has been used for numerous parades and civic events. She's been shown at the former Lafayette Concours d'Elegance that the chamber used to put on. She's been shown at the Orinda Classic Car Show. She's brought Santa Claus into the Plaza Park for the Wonderful Life program, Breakfast with Santa, which is a fundraiser for the Historical Society, Lafayette's 50th anniversary celebration. She was there. And she even made a little pass at the Lafayette Community Foundation Winemakers Dinner. And we have a few folks from the council that were happy to get a selfie with them. We participated in Akalani's rally this last year. That was a lot of fun. We weren't invited. We just joined in. Chief said it was okay. But we were flying the American flag and the Akalani's flag. So we thought it was all good. We hope to get her out more. She has been put together during COVID. We had a lot of downtime. So during that time, we restored her siren, her toolbox, polished up her bell, completely restored her little fire extinguisher that was red and white, and we got all the paint off. We recently have made some improvements to reupholstering her seat. The driver appreciates that very much. We put a floor mat. We put a sling for the hand crank. We had the coils rebuilt, and she runs much better now. And we've got a couple other improvements as well. We also restored many of the hand tools, the wrenches that you see there. I thank you very much. The photograph in the lower right-hand corner is me, very little, at Christmas time. And apparently I've always wanted to be a firefighter because I got a pedal car that year for Christmas. So I finally got my wish. So I thank you. And I'd like to invite you all for a quick look on the street where we have old Betsy. We'd like to show her off to you if you have just a few moments.
Okay, so what we'll do, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. What we'll do before we go out and see if there's any questions or comments from the council.
Yeah.
And then from the public. So any questions? Yeah, no, thank you. That was fantastic. Any members of the public either here or online have any questions about what you've seen?
Mayor, I have no speakers.
All right, so we're on our way outside to the boulevard.
Right out front. Oh, incidentally, I will tell you, the badge I'm wearing is actually an authentic Lafayette Fire Department badge that I found 2 of these on eBay. And I've not located who they originally belonged to, but they are original.